Oil futures spiking, seeing their biggest gain in 3 years. And as we're monitoring the violence that's breaking out between Iran and Israel, this is prompting concerns around the outlook for supply in the region. Joining us now on the outlook for energy sector here, we've got Fernando Valle, who is the Hedgeye Risk Management Energy Analyst. Good to have you here, taking some time this morning. Just walk us through where this immediately kind of initiates some of your attention to flow into, especially when we do see conflict like this arise in the Middle East once again.
Absolutely. I think to us, the first place to look is the oil E&Ps. They probably have the most beta, and it was a sector that was beaten up already. We actually upgraded several names, including Diamondback, Matador, and Permian Resources to the long side. A couple of weeks ago, we were starting to see already a trend moving in oil that made us more optimistic. And so we moved those names higher to the long side. Now, with obviously oil coming up 8%, it gives a lot of relief, especially to the ones that have higher leverage. None of those names are particularly high leverage names, but some of the other ones on the oil E&P side, they'll get some relief because at 63 WTI, they really weren't doing so well. They couldn't grow. In fact, they should probably be declining slightly. And at 70, they get a little bit of a respite there. They can grow. They can potentially even lower their leverage over the next couple of weeks.
Occidental Petroleum, Exxon, Chevron, all U.S. energy plays, and they're all the top trending tickers right now on the Yahoo Finance platform here. How should investors be really analyzing the U.S. specific energy sector names?
Yeah, so with Exxon specifically, it's worth mentioning that they have a lot of production in Qatar gas. It's a very significant part of Exxon's earnings, which is obviously in the midst of the conflict. Qatar shares the North Field with Iran, and a lot of the exports go through the Strait of Hormuz. So there's some risk there. ConocoPhillips and Shell, Total all have participations in that field. When you look at Oxy or Chevron, they have less exposure to that area. Oxy is probably even the least out of all of them. I mentioned all the pure U.S. E&Ps. I think they get more of that leverage. And also because on the refining segment where Exxon, Chevron, BP, they're all exposed there, I think this is negative for the refining segment. And so with the pure oil E&Ps tend to do better in this overshoot of oil.
Fernando, I wonder, from what you've been able to analyze in prior instances, how long is the tail in terms of the impact that we're talking about after the initial strikes and event that sparks the volatility to the point where we eventually see some falling action, but perhaps there's still a little bit of overhang until there's real resolution that seems like it might be emerging?
It's typically not long. You've seen it with the attacks in Saudi Arabia a few years ago. And then with the October 7th, this lasts a little bit. I have a friend who always says oil always overshoots, and typically wars and attacks are a good time for you to sell because you get that opportunity to sell into strength. So we'll have to see here how long the attacks go on, but typically does not take long after these initial skirmishes before it reverses. I'll say you talked about oil, some prognosis that we're going to $120 a barrel. As your previous guest was saying, the issue is that the consumer can't really afford that level of pricing. And so demand would come down significantly. So I would put a very short, I don't think that's a very likely occurrence that we'll get to those levels unless there's a significant shift in the economy.
Just lastly, while we have you here, OPEC Plus was anticipating that there would be a supply surge over the summer. How much can that potentially offset some of the initial move that we're seeing the markets react to right now?
Well, not much because a lot of that surplus would have come from that region. Most of Saudi Arabia's production's on the East Coast. Kuwait, the UAE, they all export through the Strait of Hormuz. So if that is the area of concern, it doesn't really alleviate much. The other point is that they're moving the quotas, but the production itself will be below what the quota announced, the headline number, because they're really just allowing countries that have been overproducing to now match what's already there. So if they're saying about unwinding 1.3 million barrels a day, the likelihood is that we're going to get 700,000 to 800,000 barrels a day of actual production growth.
Fernando, great reminder, great context. Appreciate you joining us this morning.
My pleasure.